How's it? Welcome back to the channel. So let's talk a bit about dream recall and also kind of linked up to that, dream journaling. And this question came up because on one of my more recent posts where I was talking about how sometimes in the morning when I remember a lot of dreams, it can take me like up to an hour or more sometimes to journal all that shit down. And my boy Atrista was commenting on it, just kind of tripping how I could remember enough of the dreams to even be spending that much time journaling it. So this is my basic technique, nothing fancy about it. It's also kind of time intensive and in a way like labor intensive. And I'm not even sure if it would work for everybody, but it works well for me, at least on how my brain works at, memorizing and remembering shit. So all you got to do for this is, well, anytime you wake up. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, it's a bit better because it gives you more chance at picking up on dreams from earlier in the night that you might have forgot if you only wake up in the morning. And so you can do that by either setting an alarm to purposely wake up at some point or points in the middle of the night. But also what I find too is a lot of times, like even if I'm not lucid, but I'm really locked into my dreams, I'll realize when they're breaking down and passing through hypnopompia, because like every time you're sleeping through your sleep cycles, REM comes at the end. Then as REM's ending, you pass through hypnopompia and you rise back up to stage 1 of sleep. Sometimes you're kind of like totally awake. And you can even see this sometimes too, where say if you have a significant other or somebody you're sleeping with and you notice them in the middle of the night moving around and you might think they're awake, but then, you ask them, the next morning, hey, were you awake at like 2 in the morning? They're like, man, they have no recollection of it. That's because, their REM was ending. They were kind of coming to this, kind of liminal half wake up state. Then they kind of sink back down into stage 1, stage 2 and hit REM again. But anytime you wake up, so for me, sometimes if I wake up from that, I'll realize it, right? So it gives you a great opportunity to do this. So all you're going to do whenever you wake up is immediately, and you got to actually build the habit of immediately doing this, because if you don't, those dreams are just gone instantly, right? But immediately trying to recall whatever dream you were just coming out of. Then what you're going to do is you're going to pick the part of the dream that you want to focus on to remember. So you actually got to be a little bit picky here. And then start replaying that back in your head. And then as you're doing that, you want to narrate it. And you want to narrate it in the way you're going to journal it later on in the morning. And also, this is kind of like basic dream journaling shit, but in case you don't notice, whenever you're journaling, you want to journal in the present tense, right? So, instead of saying like, I was at the beach and the waves are really big and I was scared I was going to drown, you would kind of switch that up to be like, I am at the beach, the waves are getting bigger, I'm worrying I might drown. So kind of just basically word it like that. But basically, so you start narrating the dream like that, starting with the part of the dream that you want to remember the most. Go through that a few times and you start to build that out. And, you could focus on a part a little bit before that main part you're remembering, kind of go through that main section again that you want to keep the memory, go a little bit past it. And then you just kind of keep building and expanding it out like that. And then say you get to a point where you remember, you've committed everything to memory that you remember in that first chunk that you wanted to focus on. Then you can go back to a different part of the same dream or go back to dreams from earlier in the night. Same basic approach there. Pick a point you want to start off with, start narrating it and journaling it. Narrating it, not journaling it yet, just narrating it in the present tense. Something else can really work well here too is as you're rehearsing the dream in your head, focus a lot on the different emotions and feelings you were going through while you were going through it in the dream. It just really helps it to kind of sink in there better. And then just keep expanding out. But every time you go to a different part of the dream to commit it to memory, keep returning to that first part you were committing to memory to keep it there. Then, as you start to get certain parts committed to memory well and you feel like you got a pretty good grasp on it, then you don't have to return to it every time you're narrating some other parts of the dream. But still yet, every so often, just to be sure, come back and narrate it. Then before you want to give up on all that, let it all go and drift off back to sleep, make sure you run through everything front to back, all that you can remember in order, narrating it as you want to journal it, keeping track of the different emotions and things you're feeling. Then if you wake up again at any other point in the night before you get up for the final time in the morning, same process, start narrating a dream. Be sure to come back to the dreams you were memorizing when you got up the first time. Then when you get up in the morning for the final time, do that same thing. Start committing to memory any dreams that you were just coming out of, waking up right before, for the final time in the morning. Being sure to come back to those first dreams you were remembering when you first started doing this whole memory shit. Let me see. Oh, also, because you can only hold so much in your memory, right? Sometimes you're going to have to let some shit go. So you could still focus on the main points. You can kind of go over some other parts that aren't that important, that if you forget it, no big deal. But focus on the main points. And then when you do this When you do this the first time in the middle of the night, I still spend at least like 5 to 10 minutes or so doing that process. But then of course in the morning, if you're, remembering a whole bunch of dreams, this could take a pretty long time. You could be spending like 20 minutes or more in bed, kind of trying to rehearse all of that. Something else that's good about this too is before you go ahead and get up, so it's good to actually, when you're doing that in bed, pretend like you're sleeping so nobody else comes and fucks with you, right? But if you have family or something in the house. But then as you're doing that, if you do get up and there are other people in the house, like say like my kids are awake and they're asking me for breakfast and shit when I get up, because I've committed it to memory well enough, I actually have a bit of a buffer zone where I can go ahead, tell them good morning, ask them what they want to eat, make their breakfast. But I keep my talking basically to a minimum, because as I'm not talking to them, I'm still rehearsing this shit in my head, saying the storylines, bringing up the emotions, kind of hold that in my memory better. Then once they're eating, everything's set, I can go run upstairs as soon as possible and start typing that shit out. So that's my basic technique. Nothing fancy there. Give it a try and let me know how it works for you. And of course, keep the lucid dreaming practice legit. Something I forgot to add into the other video is when you go ahead and start journaling this stuff, especially if you're journaling a lot, right? It can be very beneficial to put a couple quick bullet points or short sentences from the different parts of the dreams you want to remember. That way, when you spend a big chunk of time writing out the first dream, when you hit those other bullet points, it can help jog your memory so you don't, forget shit. So with that said, that wraps it up. Aloha.